All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, baseball fans of all ages, I am Beast Mikey. I'm now riding on my train of thought. As you can see, the baseball flow will be very different compared to what I've previously done when it comes to power rankings, baseball videos, etc. And we're going to go into a brand new era, brand new season, brand new era when it comes to the power rankings and how I'm going to do this. Now, the 4 tiers are still going to happen. And when it comes to baseball, there will still be NBA style rankings, as in 7, 7, 8, 8, in terms of the number of teams in each tier. But how do they get to the new era in question? Goes like this. Instead of Fulton, Kentucky, we're going to retire the Fulton, Kentucky zombie tier, and instead we're going to go to the Eurostar zombie tier. Now, why Eurostar, you may ask? It actually is not about the train itself. It's about an incident that happened in 2009 where it was a quote-unquote Disney train ride. Unfortunately, during a snowstorm, it happened in France. It led to an electrical failure because they were trapped in the Chanel Tunnel, if you will, and over 2,000 people were stuck on the train for about 2 or 3 days, and it cut off all the power, and it was just horrible. It was a horrible sight. So I decided to honor that particular unfortunate incident with the zombie tier. You can see the Eiffel Tower in the background. Anyway, let's get to the teams in said tier. Colorado, avoid 122. To be honest with the Rockies, there really isn't a lot to look forward to Colorado-wise, except for hopefully they can avoid having 122 losses and resetting the record for futility. It looked like last year they were going to do that. They were going to get to 122 losses. But fortunately for them, they found a way not to. They found a way to actually look decent down the stretch in the second half of the season. Now, for Colorado, we obviously know about the Chris Bryant deal and how terrible it has been. And okay, yeah, cool. That's an albatross, understood. But there is something to look forward to when it comes to watching Rockies baseball. Not that people really do that. Hunter Goodman turned out to be a very good player last season, and he in Denver could certainly challenge for 40 bombs, which does not happen from a catcher's perspective. Goodman earned an all-star appearance, and it wasn't just because he was a Rocky, it was because he was legitimately good. And I think considering its cores, he could absolutely drop 40 bombs this season. Obviously, the pitching is going to be the major question mark because, of course it is. It's Colorado we're talking about. They are terrible at this whole pitching thing. Can Colorado actually have, somewhat respectable pitching? And most importantly, avoid the whole 122 losses thing. That's going to be, I guess, the big thing for Colorado this season. Washington, James Wood, and I do like some of the other pieces. Like CJ Abrams, for example, is a good player. They've got some decent young guys in their lineup. Okay, sure, they tormented the Mets last year, which was always nice. But James Wood is their main star. And they did, I think, get a respectable deal for Mackenzie Gore. He was a 5-for-1 trade with the Rangers. I think they did a decent job there. I like some of what Washington may have, but overall, they just don't have too much. Wood aside, he'll make the All-Star team as long as he's healthy, sure. But other than him, it's not great. It's not ideal. Washington probably ends up finishing last and very distantly in a very good National League East. Minnesota. Lopez lost looms. Maybe Minnesota would have had a legitimate fighting chance with Lopez and Joe Ryan at the top of the rotation. Obviously, Byron Buxton as their cornerstone piece in the everyday lineup and in center field. As long as he's healthy, hopefully he's healthy. We'll knock on wood for that because he never seems to get that. Anyway, after Minnesota dropped the nuke last season, it felt like Ryan and Lopez were the only two guys left standing. And Ryan and Buxton, I should say. And obviously now they got Lopez. And unfortunately, the latter had the TJS and is going to be out for the year, which is a devastating, it had an elbow injury. It's a devastating injury. He's out for the season and he's going to have TJS. It's a brutal way to lose your second best pitcher. And I guess the question is, how big of a bag or bribe, if you will other teams have to give to get Joe Ryan and or Byron Buxton out of Minnesota, who are effectively the last two guys left standing from what was a major nuke at the trade deadline dropped on the Twins' heads as pretty much everybody left the Twins organization outside of those two. St. Louis. This feels unfamiliar. I'm used to great Cardinals teams. I'm used to mediocre Cardinals teams. I'm used to mediocre Cardinals teams that won World Series. We've seen it twice in my lifetime. I won't talk about the second one and how that playoff run began. But anyway, I don't think I'm really used to bad Cardinals teams, awful Cardinals teams, St. Louis teams where their season's effectively cooked and they're going to be last place because their farm system is not pixie dust anymore. They decided to permanently drop a nuke, and they moved on from Brendan Donovan and Nolan Arenado this past offseason. Now, the question, I guess, is JT Weatherholt. He's going to make the show after being drafted last year, top 10. He was 7th overall in 2024. Can he continue to mash like he did in AA? Can he continue to do that? This Cardinals team is interesting in the sense of we're not used to seeing them be terrible. And now that we're going to see them be bad, how bad will they actually be? At least fans in Big Mac Land are going to be full because of the buffet line they're going to have in terms of food. At least there's that. They got plenty of food going up there at Big Mac Land. LA or Anaheim Angels? Wasting Trout. Time. Yes, it seems like they're wasting both of these things. They're wasting Mike Trout's career, and they've wasted time. They probably should have traded him 2 or 3 years ago to get maximum value, but Artie Moreno's incredibly stubborn and refuses to rebuild. For that matter, they probably should have just traded them when Shohei Ohtani decided, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to go around the corner and go to a real LA team and make it happen, which obviously he did, and they did, and obviously they've got 2 titles, and the Dodgers will be featured much later in this video. Anyway, when it comes to the Angels, Mike Trout obviously will be going to the Hall of Fame, but it feels like it's on the board that he never wins a playoff game in his career because the Angels will get nowhere close to them. To be honest, the Angels' offense, Trout aside, is actually not awful. They've got decent pieces on this unit. The problem is the pitching is awful, and the farm system is also one of the worst in baseball. They're 4th worst in baseball according to ESPN. It's kind of wild. Logan O'Hoppe can play, obviously. And the Angels are going to hit their home runs, sure. But they can't pitch. Their pitching has been awful the last couple of years. It was terrible last year for long stretches. The bullpen was also pretty rough. They don't look like anything better than the last place team. Can the Angels prove me wrong? I guess we'll see. Chicago White Sox. Potentially interesting offense. They got a bunch of kids in that unit on the south side of Chicago. And for once, they don't look like they should be the worst team in baseball. And for that matter, the worst team in their division. Because did you see the way Minnesota finished last year? And the Twins didn't really truly improve this offseason. So why would I think the Twins are going to be better than the White Sox, who looked respectable at different points? They improved by almost 20 games. Well, you couldn't do much worse, but they improved by almost 20 games last season compared to the 24 destruction that was. And the big headliner, obviously, is going to be Munetaka Murakami, who signed with the White Sox and I think stunned a lot of people. I think we all imagined he was going to sign with a contender. Big city, sure, but a contender. And yes, he can rake, as we've seen in the WBC and as those in Japan saw in the NPB league, as he was raking. Now, I guess the other big thing will be, can he hit against legitimate Major League pitching? Yes, he mashed in the WBC, as I mentioned, but a lot of it was against people who are not going to be pitching in the big time starting, well, tomorrow night, I guess, with the Yankees-Giants game, and obviously going through. And then there's the whole thing about hitting fastballs. Can he hit them? I guess we'll see. The White Sox offense should be at least somewhat okay, and they look better. Grant Taylor looked rock solid as he was pitching in AA, and maybe he can also help out their rotation, and maybe that's the other part of this. Can the White Sox rotation get better? Can Chase Meredith continue to improve? Can Colson Montgomery continue to get better? Miguel Vargas continue to do his thing? I guess that's going to be the major question. This offense could be sneaky good. They're obviously at least 2, maybe 3 years away from the showtime, unless they take an A's-like jump where everyone just jumps all at once. It just still feels like they're going to be a couple of years away because their rotation also has to develop. And Miami, a dynamic duo. The Marlins 1-2 starters, I would say, compare favorably well to a lot of 1-2 starters in the game. It's hard not to. Sandy Alcantara and Yuri Perez look like excellent 1-2 dynamic dudes as long as the former gets back to anywhere close to his Cy Young form that he had a few years ago. He didn't look great after TJS in the first half of last season. Sandy didn't. but his second half was tremendous, and he was really stifling people. The Marlins bats, though, obviously are the big question here. Kyle Stowers looks great, and the rest of the lineup can be pretty pesky. I guess the question will be, can they keep that up? And can Stowers continue his form that he had in the summer of 2025, where he was absolutely amazing during that time period? And when Stowers went down, missing a lot of September, the Marlins offense was kind of locked down. Well, until they played the Mets, and unless they played the Mets, for that matter, which they treated like their World Series. Can this Marlins team do anything in what's going to be an incredibly crowded NL East? I expect them to pitch. I just don't know if they can hit enough. And now we're going to go to what used to be the Birmingham, Alabama Monkey's Paw Tier, and instead it's going to be the UK Pacer Monkey Paw Tier. Now, where does this come from, you ask? It actually comes from Pacer trains that were meant to last only 20 years over in Britain, but instead they lasted 37 and were developed in sort because of a train car shortage. The funny thing about these trains were that they were truthfully buses on train tracks, so it was kind of odd. They were built from a bus-style shape, and they were very bumpy. They were just obviously not made for trains. They were made very bumpy. The ride wasn't very comfortable at all. It was just a mess, and somehow they lasted almost 40 years. Anyway, that's going to honor this train, and I guess dishonor maybe, and we're going to go to Monkey's Paw Tier time with the Ohio teams, and starting with Cincinnati first. Need more proof. Hunter Green going down until the All-Star break is devastating to me, and I like this pitching staff. I think Lodolo's pretty good. Overall, the pitching staff's pretty good. And offensively, getting Gino Suarez was a huge deal, and he should absolutely help out an offense that could certainly use that extra pop with Elly De La Cruz, who is one of one and incredibly special. He should be 30-30, and it should be pretty easy for him to do that. I would expect him to bounce back fairly heavy compared to what he was in 2025, where his numbers took a little bit of a dip. I expect him to kind of get better from this season. I like what they have in Chase Burns, who pitched pretty well last year as well. Can the Reds get things going when it comes to their pitching staff and hold it down until Hunter Green returns? They're in a decent division, so maybe they do, but it's going to be a little tricky to deal with the three teams I haven't mentioned yet, aside from Cincinnati and St. Louis. We'll stay in Ohio, and we'll go to Cleveland now. Not enough offense. Yes, Jose Ramirez is the MVP candidate. The problem is, what else is on this offense? That's my big concern when it comes to Cleveland, and it's the annual concern because the Guardians really didn't spend at all in free agency. They didn't even spend $8 million, which is wild, on new guys. They spent a lot of money to keep Jose Ramirez, as they should have, and they did get Rhys Hoskins, who in theory makes the team and at his best showed himself to be an absolute monstrous cleanup hitter. We saw that for years as a Philly, and he never really recovered from the torn ACL in Milwaukee. He never got back to those heights of heights. Now that he's further along from that ACL tear, maybe he makes the team, perhaps becomes their DH that this will desperately need as a right-handed bat who can be a monster at his peak of powers. As great of a defensive center fielder as he is, and Steven Kwan really is that, can the offense get back to what it needs to be? Can Kyle Manzardo get to what he needs to be when it comes to playing at first base? Would allow Hoskins to play DH in theory. And you take his glove off the field because Hoskins' glove has never been spectacular. The point is, the Guardians, I expect them to pitch well. I just don't trust the offense enough around Jose Ramirez to help him and help them get back to the playoffs. At least not this year. Tampa Bay, good offense, but the pitching is the interesting question for the Rays. And it all starts with Shane McClanahan. Can he get back to what he was before he had TJS, where he was in bona fide ace? He was looking real good. He was killing it. And unfortunately, since his return, it has not looked promising. We'll see what he can get back to now that he's further along. Drew Rasmussen's another one that was looking like a really nice second pitcher or even third pitcher on a great staff. Can he get back to what he needs to be? Ryan Pepoit can be interesting. And Ryan Pepoit could be a nice third option for a pretty solid Tampa Bay rotation if they're all pitching well. Obviously, the offense is legit. Junior Caminero obviously leading the way, and he had an excellent breakout season and looking like an absolute monster. Probably hits another 40 bombs this year. At least you would expect him to drop 40 on them. Yandy Diaz has been tremendous, and Jonathan Armada has looked like a really good player. Like, there's real promise on this offense, this Tampa Bay offense, and it's nice to see that not only are they going back home to the Trop for a year or two, but they're also going to probably get a new stadium, and you need to see it. And we needed to see Tampa Bay actually have a true baseball home that is really theirs, and it looks really awesome and modernized. I like seeing that when it comes to the Rays. That's great to see that they've apparently figured it out when it comes to putting together a new stadium. Good on you, Tampa Bay. I'm glad you're keeping the Rays. I'm glad they're getting a new stadium. Arizona, pitching still concerning. What should have been best move, one of the better moves of the offseason a couple of years ago, was getting Corbin Burnes. And unfortunately for him, Burnes had the TJS, and it pretty much burned last season, no pun intended. Done for the year. That really sucked for him. And even still, with that, and trading Josh Naylor, and trading Gino Suarez last July, Arizona still made it to the last week of the season in what was admittedly a terrible race for the 6th seed in the National League playoffs. Why? Well, Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte are two top 10 to 15 players in baseball, and they acted like it, and they played like it, and their offense looked awesome down the stretch. That pitching was terrible, but the offense looked awesome down the stretch. The pitching is still the question here. How healthy will Burnes be if he's able to actually even pitch? And around after him, can the staff itself get it together and get right here? If so, Arizona, it's on the board to make the playoffs. Gerardo Perdomo was an absolute monster too. I think we should also mention that on this Arizona offense, which I think is going to put up runs with pretty much everybody. I'm just very concerned that their pitching just doesn't have enough. Merrill Kelly, we'll see if Merrill Kelly can get back to what he was, and Michael Soroka was a nice signing in the offseason, but this obviously is going to be frontlined by what Corbin Burnes may or may not do, and how much does that Gallon have left in the tank, I guess, is the other thing to really consider here. Pittsburgh actually spent money. Yeah, believe it or not, the Pirates actually opened their checkbooks for once. They actually did something in the offseason to not waste what is a generational pitcher in Paul Skeens, who's looked as advertised since pretty much he took the mound his first time. He's been amazing and incredible, but the Pirates' offense was gross and completely wasted one of his controllable years. Connor Griffin, sure, is not a guy they spent money on, and in fact, they're kind of withholding because they're going to keep him out for the first couple of weeks for team control. Of course they did. That's just what they do. They like to save some money. However, the Pirates did actually get dudes that can actually hit baseballs over fences and whatnot. Marcell Ozuna, Ryan O'Hearn, Brandon Lau. These are three guys who have been known to hit baseballs over fences. Good on you. You're helping out Brian Reynolds, who has kind of looked not great over the last couple of years, even though he's had a pretty good career in Pittsburgh. And Oneil Cruz, who's electrifying to watch. He could also be maddening, but he's electrifying to watch. He's if he can rein in the dumb stuff, he becomes a superstar in short order, I would say. He's just way too much fun to watch play baseball. The Pirates, in theory, should be decent, at least if the offense is, well, alive and not full of zombies, because if they are, they will head to zombie tier real quick, and it will not be an accident. They will stay there for a very long time. Mitch Keller is a very good SP2 and doesn't get anywhere near the praise that he probably should because of Skeens. I guess the question is, can the Pirates actually put it together and get closer to ending their drought of missing the playoffs? It's not Angels long, but it's a fairly long drought of them missing the playoffs. San Francisco, Tony Vitello's intro. He is the new manager of the Giants, who's coming over from Tennessee. It's a bold move by Buster Posey, who's obviously been the GM there, and other moves that the Giants made, I think, really helped their ballpark out in the sense of, okay, they didn't go out and get the big bats. Sure, they could probably use that, but instead they went out and got people who, if they hit in the gap in triples alley, they will get triples. Larissa Reyes has been maybe the best contact hitter in baseball over the last 4 years. Incredibly impressive. He's won batting titles in two different places. He's like that. And getting Harrison Bader, who can cover an amazing amount of ground in center field, and you need to at AT&T Park out there in San Francisco, I think he's going to do wonders for that defense. You're giving Rafi Devers a full year in San Francisco, and in theory, Devers may crack the 30 home run mark, which is something that, quite simply, they haven't had since Posey, which is absolutely stunning, but true. Can the Giants get enough offense and get enough power to make a jump and make a move in the NL playoff race? They're going to have the pitching, in theory. Logan Webb is a Cy Young contender. And in theory, the Giants, after Webb, should be at least decent in throwing baseballs over the plate without them getting hit back to them. Or over them, if you will. We'll see what the Giants are capable of. And Texas. Offensive resurgence needed. It will be a little different without Adolis Garcia, who helped carry the Rangers through a world title with an amazing playoff run in 2023. But the Rangers offense really wasn't the main story last season. Instead, it was the pitching. It was Jacob deGrom basically looking like he's back in 2016, where he was absurd. It was Nathan Eovaldi looking better than he's ever been as a great 1-2 punch. The Rangers could pitch. They showed themselves. They were one of the best staffs in baseball, and their bullpen was pretty solid as well. It's just the offense was nowhere to be seen from time to time. And we'll see if Corey Seager and company can get right, because Seager was obviously another big piece of that championship team. We'll see if he can get right. Brandon Nimmo comes over from the Mets in the trade with Marcus Semien. In theory, he should stabilize the left field spot and hold it down there. Wyatt Langford's a very good player. Can he take that next step forward? I think that's the other big question when it comes to this Texas Rangers team. He's going to have to if the Rangers are going to make the playoffs and help supplement this rotation, which still should be great if DeGrom still has that arm. We're going to go next to the California Zephyr and the playoff tier. Now, this honors the Amtrak train ride from Chicago to San Francisco, and it is regarded by most as the best train ride in America. It's incredibly scenic, over 2,400 miles going through such things as the Rockies and not the Colorado ones, although they're probably better to go through than the Colorado ones, and the Nevada mountains and Sierra. So they actually go through a lot of scenic, beautiful travel over a 52-hour period. And honestly, that's a train ride I would absolutely take. It's part of that train ride I would take across the country, that whole country rail pass, if I ever have the time. I would love to do that. Anyway, let's go to the playoffs here, and let's get to business. Sacramento, poor man's Orioles. That's what they are to me, and that's where they kind of fit. I'll get to Baltimore later on. They are in this tier, spoiler alert. This offense is gross, where they have Nick Kurtz coming off a Rookie of the Year where he was an absolute masher. Shea Langoliers was a beast. Brett Roker's a monster. Tyler Soderstrom can absolutely rake. They just paid Jack Wilson, too. Lawrence Butler can hit. Those boys can all rake. And then Jeff McNeil comes over. He's a former batting champion. He's going to also help the cause if Jeff McNeil can still hit, because that may still be a problem for him. Anyway, this offense can mash. Then there's the pitching. Luis Severino was a disastrous signing last season. He did not work out there at all, at least at home. On the road, he was fine. At home, where baseballs get hit far, he was serving up those baseballs that got hit far. And obviously, they don't have Mason Miller. They got a great haul to trade Miller away, but they don't have one of the best closers in baseball, and maybe the most intimidating considering the gas that he throws. Anyway, this offense can rake, and it's going to probably feel like a lot of 9-7 games, a lot of 10-8s, a lot of 11-10s, it feels like, for this Sacramento team. The problem is, how many of them are they going to win considering the pitching? That's the big test for me. If their pitching can be anything productive, they may steal a playoff spot, and that's where I am with the A's. And if I had to say a team makes some sort of a jump, I think it's these guys. I think they can make a severe jump into the at least 500 and maybe even up to 85 wins. No further than that, because I just don't trust the pitching enough. Kansas City, not just Witt. Yes, Bobby Witt's a top 3 player in baseball. Understood. Other than the 2 aliens in front of him and Shohei and Judge, he probably is the best player in baseball. He's not alone here. The Pasquatch, we just saw absolutely destroy baseballs for the World Baseball Classic. And we saw Maikel Garcia had a very good year last season. And yet, Kansas City just didn't put up enough runs. They were 4th, 5th on the bottom in terms of actually scoring them in baseball last year. Can those guys step their games up this season? Starling Marte was an interesting signing, and I do want to think that he can step his game up and do more as Kansas City actually they moved their fences in. So maybe they can actually produce more runs at Kauffman. That would be kind of nice. Their pitching was legitimately good. Like Seth Lugo and company, they could actually pitch, and they were respectable at it. The offense is what kept them out of the playoffs. In an absurdly weak AL Central, well, not the Tigers, but everyone else, in theory, Kansas City is your second best team. Is that going to be good enough to make the playoffs so they can beat up on 3 mediocre to bad teams in that division? Now we get to Baltimore. Love the Bats. Why are they a more expensive version of the A's? Well, Pete Alonso's contract has something to do with it, and he's obviously not alone with the likes of Gunnar Henderson, for example. We do need Adley Rutschman to get back to what he was, though. I mean, that would be kind of useful and kind of productive, because a couple of years ago, he was looking like a young star for the future, and instead, it's looked kind of rough. I love what the Orioles did, side note, with their ballpark renovations for Camden Yards, which is obviously the gold standard of the modern ballparks going into all of this. I love that they continue to renovate and stay new and stay fresh. That is a beautiful thing to see about Camden Yards. But anyway, we'll get to that later. And I may get to that stadium at some point later this season. Anyway, the question of why I call them the Sacramento A's, but a little bit more expensive. They're pitching. How confident are we in that their pitching gets back to what it was? Cal Bradish was great. Unfortunately, he had TJS, and they kind of knocked him out for a year and change. Can Bradish get back to what looked like he was going to be a young star coming up in 2024? He was amazing until that injury. They still have Trevor Rogers, who's going to pull up and be SP2 for them. They re-signed Zach Eflin, and Chris Bassett's there. So they have names. Shane Baz also there. So they have decent names there. But can the latter 3 help out the former 2? That's going to be the big question here. And obviously, Batista in the back of the pen is going to not nail it down for a lot of games because he's an all-star caliber closer. He should be able to nail down a lot of games for Baltimore as long as they're able to win them. But the big thing is Rutschman. Can he get back to what he once was? Can he get back to the dominance that he had a few years ago where he was looking like the co-star to Gunnar Henderson, who has obviously been great for the last few years, and he crushed it in the WBC. This Orioles team could be nasty. As long as the pitching is there, they could also be a playoff team once again. San Diego, all or nothing. That's kind of what this run feels like. The Padres have obviously dove deep into the Pacific Ocean with all the trades and all the moves and the determinate nature of AJ Preller and their crew in the front office to do anything in their power to not only beat the Dodgers, but beat everyone else in the National League and get their first championship out in San Diego. The bats are still there, Machado and Tatis and Bogarts. Yeah, you understand the bats. Those 3 obviously are going to carry the water here. And Musgrove in terms of the rotation, Mason Miller in terms of the pen. In theory, they're going to carry the water. But do they have enough? Do they simply have enough to deal with the National League teams I have not mentioned yet? Do they have enough bats to deal with the likes of the Phillies and the Dodgers and the Cubs and the Mets and company? Do they have enough arms to deal with these teams? They have the closer, certainly. They have Tatis, who's a top 20-ish player in the game, and Machado's still really good, like I mentioned. It's just, maybe they just feel like a poor man's version of a rich team in the sense of they're 100 millionaires, but they're dealing with billionaires that are ahead of them in these power rankings. Well, maybe not the Braves, but Atlanta's got pitching. Houston, return to playoffs. Yes, I think the Astros are coming back to the playoffs. And to be honest, I think they only missed them because of all the injuries they had, where pretty much their entire lineup had various injuries throughout the season. Jordan barely played last year. Altuve had injuries. Correa got there, sure, but just ran out of time. This Houston team played well, and it really was a good squad that just ran into a white-hot Seattle team, and Seattle buried them, and that was the end of it for the Astros. And they're kind of sort of dynastic run, if you will, in the American League, where you can pencil the Astros into the playoffs, and for a lot of the last decade, into the ALCS minimum. I think Houston returns to the playoffs, and I think we get a borderline MVP caliber run from Yordan Alvarez. How much of an MVP? We'll see. We'll see if he is able to win the Most Valuable Player award and bring another one to Houston like Altuve has. We'll see if Houston can do that. But I think the Astros, with a guy like Hunter Brown and company, I think they're going to get back to the postseason. Milwaukee misses the playoffs. This is probably my big shocker here when it comes to the playoff predictions I'm going to have. I don't have Milwaukee in it, and I just don't trust the offense enough. Their pitching should be okay. I think their pitching is going to do really, really well because that's kind of what they do. Their defense is outstanding, and there may not be a defense I trust more than them. trading away Freddie Peralta, who they probably weren't going to re-sign anyway, was probably a shrewd move. Getting Brandon Sprout, we'll see if Sprout can continue to develop, as he looked promising for the Mets, but I think he needs a little bit more time. Jacob Misiorowski looked excellent, but he kind of sort of ran out of gas a little bit towards the end of the season. I do wonder if he can show that, okay, he's not a fluke. Can he be the frontline guy that they're going to desperately need to make it back to the postseason? That's going to be something we're seeing. Again, this defense is excellent. They don't make mistakes in the field. They're really sound and really productive in that room. Jackson Churrio's great. Christian Yelich is still really good. I just don't know if they have enough power to get back to the postseason. And that's where, to me, I am with this Milwaukee team. I think they will go from best record in baseball to missing the playoffs. They won't miss by much, but I just don't think they have enough offense to get there. Atlanta, health concerns. They have probably been the most snake-bit team since winning the World Series a couple of years ago when it comes to injuries, where pretty much after the Phillies put them in their place for 2 years in the playoffs, they have had nothing but pain and nothing but injury issues. They still made the playoffs in the 24 year despite their injury issues and despite losing Acuna, and they just ran out of gas as they were unceremoniously destroyed by the Padres. They didn't even get that far, had a disastrous season, and were probably the National League's most disappointing team due to injuries. But everyone should be relatively back, except for Spencer Strider, who's somehow hurt and he's going to miss the first part of the year. But they should be back. They should be back. How much does Chris Sale have left in the tank as he's in his upper 30s? How much does he have left at the top of rotations? In theory, he should be good and should be good to go. I'm just concerned that he may run out of gas of being a pure ace. Acuna should return to the MVP race, and he's got a couple years left on his deal to do so. I would imagine Acuna is going to be fine. Austin Riley should be good. I would imagine Michael Harris, who looked in stretches like a monster and like the rookie monster that he once was, can he get back to being said monster when it comes to his bat? He can obviously field. There's a Gold Glover waiting to happen once again because he's like that. But we're going to need to see Atlanta get back to what they were in terms of their health. And if so, they can get back to October. But I guess that's the real question here. Can they stay healthy enough to get to October? Boston, amazing rotation. They, like several other teams that I mentioned thus far, have a really good 1-2 punch, but their rotation overall is nasty. You're going to get the headlines from Garrett Crochet and Rachel Suarez, who signed a major deal to go up to Beantown, take the seller from 30th Street Station up to one of the two South Station, if you will, up in Boston. And in theory, the Red Sox are going to be able to mow down a lot of teams. The offense, Roman Anthony is going to be great, and it looks like he's going to be a monster. Jalen Duren should also get back to what he once was to some degree, or at least a better version of what he is. I would like to think so. Do they have enough offense other than Duran and Anthony? In theory, probably, but I just need to see it happen. I love this rotation, though. This rotation is going to be high tier, and it's going to be, I think, one of the best staffs in baseball. I think that's going to help carry them back to the postseason. And now we're going to go to the Venice Simplon Orient Express, the VSOE title tier. Why is this title tier? Well, it's the most luxurious train ride in the world. It is known for its opulence and elegance, if you will. It is actually the trains themselves, the train cars, are modernized versions of the 1920s and 30s version of these trains. They travel through European cities, starting from at most west, London, and they go to places like Paris, Venice, Rome, and Amsterdam. Paris is really a nice transfer point where they can go north to Amsterdam and pretty much anywhere else along these lines. But these trains are incredibly expensive and absurdly luxurious. It is absolutely insane how much effort and detail they put into them. Look them up. I'm telling you, they're ridiculous. Anyway, let's get to the teams in this tier. New York Mets, 24 or 25? Which version of Met are you? Are you the 2024 team that got through that season with vibes and Frankie Lindor being in God mode and Mark Vientos having an absurd year and a lot of the secondary pieces not named Lindor and Alonso and Edwin Diaz having great performances and helping them get to the NLCS where there's no shame in losing to the Dodgers? A lot of teams did that. Every team did that over the last 2 years at some point when it came to a playoff series. Or are you 2025 where you were the highest payroll in baseball and spent an absurd amount of money in free agency getting Juan Soto and trying to shore up their pieces and making a World Series run only to, from June 13th onward, be one of the 3 or 4 worst teams in baseball. It was that bad. And this is with like the Rockies and the Twins in them. That's how bad that run was. And then we, as 29 other fan bases, laughed at the Mets hysterically as they missed the playoffs. Good times were had. The Mets then started this offseason by being kind of self-destructive to what the core once was, with Nimmo being gone. I discussed his move already, and Jeff McNeil being gone, and obviously Pete Alonso being the main piece and the offense being gone. And in the grand finale, Edwin Diaz saying, okay, the Mets money is all right, but the Dodgers are there. So he went there and went across the country for $3 more million and basically made a lot of Met fans happy. I know a couple of them, they weren't so happy about that. But in any event, what Mets are you? Now that you have Jorge Polanco and Bo Bichette, and you traded for Luis Robert, and you traded for Freddie Peralta. That Peralta move I really, really like. He is a bona fide ace on a roster and a staff that needed a bona fide ace. Nolan McLean will get there. Not yet. I think he's a year away from being the true bona fide ace of a staff. I like him as an SP2. Kind of sort of love him as an SP3, to be honest, as David Peterson should still be their SP2 to start the year. Freddie Peralta being obviously SP1. My concerns are this. The corner defense. Bo Bichette's playing third base. He's never really done that, and he's never done that in games that count. That's a little concerning to me. The other part of it is Jorge Polanco's playing first base. Now, he's a better defensive player, but he's also playing a position that he's never really played when games count. That's a little concerning to me. And also your outfield defensively. A little rough. Beatty's fine. Soto and Robert. Can you guys produce on defense? You're going to have to. And you're going to have to do so quickly. Because the National League East is not for the weak. At least the top 3 teams aren't. Detroit. Scuba Watch started. It's the countdown clock for Tarek Skubal and his payday, where there's a reason why he preserved himself in spring training. There's a reason why he preserved himself and pretty much put himself in bubble wrap once he got it started in the World Baseball Classic. He is trying to get paid and trying to get paid very handsomely. He deserves to get paid and deserves to get paid very handsomely. That's why he won the arbitration deal and getting $32 million as opposed to $19 from Detroit. And that's why he will get 9 figures and probably in the $400 million version of 9 figures when it gets to November or after the baseball lockout that's inevitable. That's going to happen because that's a real thing. Anyway, he should get paid. And the Tigers do have a legitimate offense and lineup around him. Spencer Torkelson looked pretty good. Riley Green looks like a monster. Kerry Carpenter looking like a young monster as well. I like those big 3 guys. Can they continue to hit? I would like to think so. And they also get Skubal some help in the rotation and getting Framber Valdez late in free agency. That's a pretty solid move as well. And I think they could be a really good 1-2 punch and one of the better ones in baseball. Do they have enough, though? Can the Tigers' young bats continue to develop? Can Javi Baez stay at all-star levels that he had this past season, where he looked really good as a center fielder? That's going to be a big question mark to me as Skubal watch continues. And how much money does Skubal get when it is time for him to get a check cut to him? And who cuts that check, for that matter? Chicago Cubs, depth around PCA. Earlier this evening, PCA signed 5 years, $115 million, and got the hookup from Chicago to stay there long term. He broke out last year, as we know, and looked like a monster and a superstar in the outfield. Tremendous defensively, and the bat also was, well, tremendous. Michael Busch showed he can hit, and he might potentially hit 40 this year. Can he do that? Kind of stunning. The Cubs haven't had too many guys hit 40 home runs in a year. I would have thought Anthony Rizzo or Chris Bryant did it. No, they never did. 9 Cubs have done it. Ernie Banks and Sammy Sosa being 2 of them. Derek Lee being the only first baseman in Cub history to do it. But that's the list that ideally Michael Busch may join if he's able to hit 40 home runs or so. That would be quite interesting for him. And the Cubs pitching is decent enough, I would say. It's on the board that it's not, I think, over the top great. Matthew Boyd looked good, and Cade Horton is a young star potentially. He could be something, but can the Cubs pitch it well enough to make it happen? Jameson Taillon, can he get back to and remain at the solid play that he had last season? And how do you replace Kyle Tucker, who, yes, admittedly kind of fell off a little bit towards the second half of the year? Can the Cubs adequately replace him? Can Suzuki continue to do his thing as well, or get back to what he once was doing? A pretty big year for Chicago, and a year where Chicago shouldn't be excluded from potential World Series contention if things go right for them. Guess we'll see what the Cubs do. Philadelphia, clock is ticking. This is a window that is absolutely closing, and soon. The core of the Phillies are all in their 30s and all getting older. Yes, they've done a really good job of taking care of the young aces that are in play. And actually, the great pitching staff that the Phillies have. They've done a great job in taking care of it. In paying Jesus Luzardo, who might be a potential ace of the future. And taking care of Christopher Sanchez this past week. And keeping arguably the second best pitcher in the National League. And that's what he was in Cy Young last year, keeping him together for 5 or 6 more years. The pitching staff as a whole is locked in place for another 4 to 6 years, with the exception of Zach Wheeler, who's retiring after the 27 year, like he had said. Anyway, speaking of him, Wheeler should be back sooner than later, which is a huge deal and a huge boon for a Phillies team that already has pitching as a strength and can certainly continue to improve it and move Taijuan Walker to the bullpen and/or as a kind of shared fifth starter / reliever for Andrew Painter starts, who's finally making it to the show. Speaking of rookies, Justin Crawford's making it to the show, and he's as Carl Crawford's kid. You would think the speed and defense are there. They are indeed there. Can the bat be major league ready? That's going to be the big question mark to me. Can the bat be good enough to play in the bigs? If so, he should be good to go. Then there's the offense. You already know the names of Schwarber and Harper and Turner and Realmuto. Alec Boehm's going to have to step his game up, and Adolis Garcia comes in as the writing candidate for right field, as the Phillies have had a revolving door of corner outfielders try to be the right-handed bat to protect Bryce or Kyle or Trey. Garcia's turn. Can he do that in a ballpark that's way more suited to hitting than what Texas has going on down there in their ballpark? Big year for the Phillies. In theory, they should be really good again. But in October, can they be great again? I guess we'll see. New York Yankees, Aaron Judge's jury. We know Judge is an alien. We know he'll probably hit 45 to 50 bombs. Understood. We got that. But it's everyone else. That's where my question goes when it comes to this offense. Can Trent Grisham get back to what he was last year, where he was absolutely crazy at the plate? Cody Bellinger, will he be worth the money the Yankees just paid him? Josh Chisholm, as maddening as he can be in the field, has a bat. Can he show said bat? Ben Rice has shown some flashes as well in the Yankee lineup, and obviously the Little League ballpark that is their stadium. In theory, the Yankees are going to be able to hit. They should all have 20, 25, 30, 40, and in Judge's case, 50 bombs a piece. That's kind of what they do. They can mash. It's a matter of can they pitch outside of Max Fried and Garrett Cole, who should be returning soon after TJS knocked him out for last year. The Yankees proved themselves to be a really good team even without Cole. There are some problems here, though. The defense. Did you improve at all? We kind of need you to do that if the Yankees are going to make a jump and make a move back to the World Series. And the bullpen leading to David Bednar. Did the Yankees do enough? And obviously doing away with Devin Williams may have been an upgrade for them. It may be a downgrade for the Mets, but it may be an upgrade for them. Did the Yankees do enough to get back to the postseason, A, beat Toronto and or Boston, B, or potentially Baltimore, and C, did it do enough to get back to the World Series and get Aaron Judge another shot at the championship while still at his peak of powers? Giancarlo Stanton, do you still have your bat? Can you use it productively to destroy baseballs and potentially kill people because you hit baseballs very hard? I guess we'll see. Toronto, can you recover? Those may have been the two most devastating losses back-to-back we've seen in a long time for a baseball team to take. Games 6 and 7 of the World Series are just agonizing pain for a Blue Jays team that finally broke through, that finally lived up to their potential and got to the dance. In both Games 6 and 7s, in both bottoms of the ninth, and in Game 7 case, extra innings, they had the winning run at the plate to win the World Series. In every case, the Dodgers found a way to make plays. Both Game 6 and 7 ended with walk-off double plays. That has got to be gross, and has got to be as devastating of an ending as it gets. Even in Game 7, they were winning in the ninth inning and 2 outs away from the title and still couldn't win it. Which may speak more to Jeff Hoffman having a really rough year, but yeah, that happened. That's how close they were. Even with Vlad Guerrero having an excellent run to the World Series and a very good World Series in general, Ernie Clement being the new record holder for most hits in a playoff, and Vlad Guerrero, for that matter, being one hit behind him. They were excellent every time they needed to be until the very end, and that's got to be devastating. Can Toronto find a way back? Can they find a way back to the World Series? And they've got some reinforcements to help matters in this situation. Dylan Cease helping out the rotation. Trey Savage coming up for a full year. No Bo Bichette, sure, but the lineup with Komet and Vlad Jr. and Alejandro Kirk and company should still be fine and should still be able to mash against most and generally be able to handle all teams and all seasons at their very best. Toronto should be very good once again. I guess the question is, will they be good enough to get back to the World Series and make things happen? And then there's Kazuma Okamoto. Can he live up to the hype that he's bringing over from Japan and be the third baseman that this Blue Jays team could absolutely use and need to finish the job, if you will, and win the World Series? Only time will tell there. Seattle, Detroit Lions arc. That, to me, is where they kind of are at this point in time. Remember that Lions NFC Championship performance against the Niners where they were dominating, everything was looking good, and then the second half happened and they self-destructed? Well, that's kind of where I think Seattle is at their crossroads right now. Is, okay, can Seattle recover from the devastating loss that they had at their heights of heights? Game 7 ALCS, everything is looking good. George Springer then hits the 3-run homer, and then their offense gets stuck in customs, which you don't want to be stuck in customs at this moment in time at an airport. Anyway, things were looking pretty rough for the Mariners from the Springer home run on, and their devastating loss, and the most devastating loss in their franchise history, led to them not getting into the World Series. They're still the only team in baseball to not do such a thing. Yes, this offense is amazing with Raleigh and with Julio Rodriguez and with Randy Arozarena. And like the lineup is absolutely ridiculous. It's crazy, crazy good. Yes, Polanco's gone. He went to the Mets. Sure, he was a very good hitter, but they also got Brandon Donovan to replace him. So, all right, solid move there. Good. That helps out second base quite well. Seattle should still rake. They can also pitch with Gilbert and Wu. And they also have a tremendous closer in Munoz to hold it down in 9th innings of games. It does beg the question, why didn't he pitch in Game 7 when they had to have him get out of that jam with Springer at the plate? And it does also beg the question there. Anyway, is Seattle able to recover from one of the most devastating losses in baseball history to get to the World Series for the first time ever? Or are they basically the Detroit Lions of baseball in the sense of an incredibly talented team that got to the championship game, the conference championship round, and then they lose and they regress? Dan Campbell said it, that was their best shot, and he might have been right. Can Seattle prove that last year wasn't their best shot? And the LA Dodgers, the final boss. Yep, that's what they have become. The villains of baseball got even better in the offseason, getting Kyle Tucker because, of course, they can, and getting Edwin Diaz because, well, of course they can. A team that really didn't have too many weaknesses, even though that bullpen was real shaky in the playoffs and really leading up to the playoffs this past year. They were real shaky in the pen, but they found a way. They found a way to make every single play they absolutely had to in the NLDS and the World Series. They didn't have to really try that much against the Brewers. Against the Phillies and Blue Jays, they had to try, and they made every single play they absolutely had to win those games and to beat those two teams. The Phillies were so close to making sure the Dodgers didn't repeat as champions. And then obviously I talked about the Blue Jays. But the Dodgers found a way. They made it happen. All their high-priced bats proved it at different points during the playoff run. From obviously Betts and Freeman and Ohtani being God mode against the Brewers. They proved themselves. And Ohtani on the mound and Yamamoto and Blake Snell and company, they all made sure that they were going home with another championship. As they have gotten 3 in 6 years, proving the dynasty status to be legitimate. Can they get their third straight title and be the first since the late 90s to 2000 Yankees to do such a thing? Again, getting Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz should help in this regard, as their ridiculously great team continues to be ridiculously great. So let's get to a World Award season. And keep in mind, for me, and for a lot of you, I would imagine, there will be no Judge, Skubal, Skeens, or Ohtani winning any of these the main 4 awards. I'm going to exclude them because they're obviously the favorites to win those 4 awards. But let's get to who I think is going to win them. Starting with the rookies. Trey Savage in Toronto and Connor Griffin in Pittsburgh. Now, I know Griffin's going to come up a little later, but I think Griffin's going to be able to rake at PNC Park and various other ballparks that he'll play in. Meanwhile, your Savage showed himself on the biggest stage to be absolutely amazing. He locked down those Dodgers in Game 5 of the World Series this past year and was incredible throughout that playoff run. I think he showed himself to be really, really good throughout this season and handles his business enough to win Rookie of the Year. Managers, give me Dan Wilson in Seattle, give me Walt Weiss in Atlanta. I will say Wilson because I think Seattle has the best record in the American League. More on them later. And I think Walt Weiss, his first year there, as Brian Snitker had retired, I think he will show himself with, I think we'll have some decent amount of adversity because Braves injuries are a tremendous combination. They're basically Kobe and Shaq at this point. I think they're going to have some injury issues, but I think Walt Weiss manages them well and gets them back to the postseason. More on that later. Cy Young Awards, Hunter Brown from the Astros, Christopher Sanchez from the Phillies. I think they will be the guys in a non-Skeens or non-Scooble world end up being the next two best pitchers, and maybe Garrett Crochet in Boston too, in the American League, could be the pitchers in question to win the Cy Young Awards. In the case of Sanchez, it's going to be tough for him in the sense of him and Logan Webb and Zach Wheeler if Wheeler gets back to the normal form that he has. Freddie Peralta had a great Cy Young caliber year last season. So there's some real good competition there. And maybe Chris Sale, if he's back to what he was, or Spencer Strider for that matter, they could challenge for the Cy. But I think Sanchez is proving himself to be the next best pitcher in the game, in the National League. As for the American League, Max Fried could be back to that. I talked about Gilbert and Wu in Seattle. They could be there. Cease in New York. Crochet, as I mentioned, in Boston. Cease, I should say in Toronto. And Crochet in Boston. There's some real contenders to the throne in the American League too. But I will go with Hunter Brown in Houston. I think he'll have to be without Framber Valdez being there and guiding the Astros back to the postseason, which is weird to say because the Astros didn't really do that for a while. And the MVPs, not named the two aliens pretty much, Vlad Jr. in Toronto and Francisco Lindor in New York. I think those are going to be the two guys I would vote for most valuable player. In the case of Vlad, I think he continues his dominant form and being an absolute machine that he was last season, especially in the postseason when he took part ownership of the New York Yankees. And in the case of Francisco Lindor, somebody's got to hit bombs in New York. Obviously, him and Soto are the two guys I expect to. But why Lindor? Simple. Defense. He does that well. He does that really well. I think he'll probably win Gold Glove at shortstop again in the National League. And I think Lindor follows it up with the bat and finishes the job he had from 2024, where he was amazing and basically helped drag the Mets kicking and screaming into the postseason all the way to the NLCS. So those are my choices in a non-Skeen, Scooble, Judge, or Ohtani world for the main four awards. Now let's get to the playoffs. And the seeding I have is as follows. American League will go first. I have the Mariners winning the AL West. They are your 1 seed. Toronto is the 2 seed. They will win the AL East. 3 seed Tigers, they will win the Central. The 3 wild cards are in order as follows. Yankees, Red Sox, Astros. Those are my 6 American League playoff teams, and that situation goes as follows. I think the Astros beat the Tigers in the wild card round, getting revenge for a couple years ago, and I think the Yankees beat the Red Sox once again in the wild card round. So they don't reseed, which I think they should. 2 seed Blue Jays beat 6 seed Astros. I'll have the Mariners beating the Yankees in the ALDS. My ALCS is a rematch, but this time Seattle hosts, and this time Seattle wins. The Mariners, I think, go to the World Series. Now to the National League. The seedings are as follows. Dodgers are your 1 seed. Phillies are your 2 seed. I'll have the Cubs as the 3 seed. 4 seed I have is the Padres. Their division's a little weaker than the NL East, but it's not weak enough to keep the East out. I have the Mets as the 5 seed. I have the Braves as the 6. So here we go. Here's how this goes. Cubs beat Braves. Padres beat Mets. So that gets rid of the 2 AL East teams not named the Phillies. Speaking of which, I think they beat the Cubs in the NLDS. I think the Dodgers beat the Padres once again on the opposite side. Meaning that the NLCS, once again, will be Dodgers and Phillies. We've done this before in 08 and 09, and obviously the Dodgers won last year in the NLDS. But this time, with Zach Wheeler being there, I think the Phillies upset the Dodgers and go to the World Series. Give me Phillies, Mariners as the World Series, and though Seattle will be hosting, I think the Phillies will be winning the Fall Classic. Give me Phillies in 6 games over Seattle to win the World Series. So there you have it. That is my baseball preview, if you will, for 2026 before we get to the lockout. I am very happy with the ABS challenge. I think it's going to be legitimately great. I think it's going to be really good for the game and help speed things up, as well as some of the other improvements with the clock and the pitch counts and all that good stuff. Very happy for the ABS stuff to get out a lot of the terrible umpiring that we've seen over the years. Anyway, as for what's coming next on this channel, NHL and NBA power rankings. I'm going to do them both. You will see the NHL more than likely drop tomorrow morning, and then the NBA will probably drop either Wednesday night or Thursday morning. That's probably how this is going to go for both of those leagues. There's a couple big matchups in hockey that I wanted to wait on before I dropped the power rankings and made the rankings official for this week. So, in the NHL power rankings, there's one thing that I can firmly say. Vancouver, you're going to be the first stop of my next train of thought.